Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Majority Show, coming at you live from Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube every Wednesday at 7 p.m. I'm your host, Mark Devlin. This is Scotland's number one politics and chat show from an anti-nationalist or pro-UK perspective. You take your pick. I'm here tonight with my co-hosts, Mary Devlin and Mark Zegveldt. How are you both today?
Well, I'm doing very well, thank you.
Well, that's good to hear. I'm glad to hear that. Mark, how are you doing?
I'm fine, thanks.
Right, okay. So what are you going to be talking about tonight, Mark?
I'm going to talk about the power grab from the Scottish Government over the Judiciary.
Okay, and Mary, what have you got for us?
Well, tonight I'm going to be talking about how the Greens are destroying Scotland's homes and jobs.
Well, that's nothing new there particularly. And we'll all be discussing Alex Salmond's £3 million revenge lawsuit against the Scottish Government and Nicola Sturgeon, as well as talking to Dean Thomson, who was on the show, some of you will remember, a few weeks ago. But this time he's going to be talking about doing a deep dive into the Scottish National Investment Bank.
And of course, we have Zoomer of the Week.
Right, so we'll be back in just a few seconds. Right, welcome back to the Majority Show. Our aim is a better Scotland without the toxic nationalism that is strangling Scotland's potential. Well, is that nationalism going away? Maybe only so slightly. It's a long job. First, tonight, I'd like to thank everyone who has donated to our SackMatheson billboard campaign. We've collected £1,200 so far, but we actually really need to get at least 2,000 before we can get these up and online.
So if you can help us reach this target, which would help us put up a couple of billboards, we would really appreciate it.
Because basically we want to send a message, to Humza, to Matheson, to the general public that, and also maybe perhaps to the Scottish Tories and Labour who are not doing anything about it, that we are actually, there are people actually are saying something. So please, if you can, donate. You can check our social media for the link or go to donorbox.com, SackMatheson-billboards. Okay. Anyway, please look in our social media for that. And as usual, a huge thanks to UK Union Voice, United Against Separation Facebook pages for hosting the show on there, where many of you, of course, are watching tonight. Tonight, we have Mark Zegveldt co-hosting alongside Mary. Mark, what have you been up to?
Just getting ready for Christmas, some shopping, growing these spaces, Twitter spaces. We've got Ewan Broccoli on Thursday, and Dean's joining us the week after.
Right, and do you have a theme for each space?
Well, it depends on the guest. Depends on who we get as a guest. If we don't get anybody, we just talk general politics, Scottish politics.
And you as a host, do you kind of say we're going to talk about this for the next half hour, then something else? Is that the way it works?
Well, generally, I start off the topic and then it grows from there, and each speaker comes in and they might have something different to say, and then I'll ask some questions maybe, or others will come in and we'll just debate different topics. Normally, it's what's happened recently that we talk about.
But yeah, I noticed actually that you pointed out that this show actually appears as a space on Twitter. So if you're watching Twitter, then you may be able to just listen into the show anyway, or you can always watch, I suppose, on your phone. Right? Okay, that's good. Good update there. Please remember, sharing is caring. Number one thing you can do to promote this show, help the show, is to like it on YouTube. Even if you don't subscribe, please drop us a like. That we go up the algorithm. All slaves to the algorithm. We need those likes. Okay, but if you can subscribe, please do so. That even helps even more increase our reach at the click of a button. Mary, do you think you will be able to handle all the comments this week, last week?
Well, I was getting a little bit there was a bit of a deluge last week, but I do love it. So I really enjoy reading through all the comments. So if you can please keep them short and snappy, and I'll try to get as many up on the screen as I can. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so we have lots to talk about on the show tonight. We will be back in just a second. Well, I think that's about 5 seconds, but anyway. All right, breaking news. Michael Matheson has still not resigned or been sacked. As Humza Yousaf drags the issue out for more than the third week, the press is not letting it go. Today, we found out that according to Ipsos, and we'll talk a little bit more about Ipsos, Maury, the polling organisation, at the end of the show, they said that 61% of Scots think he should resign. So few, I hear you say. Yes, that's perhaps the issue with that polling thing, including 52% of SNP supporters. Although given the biases that we'll talk about later, it's likely to be even higher than that. He also refused to answer if his sons had used an illegal streaming service to watch the Celtic games. I've got this clip here, and his face, I like his sad face, it's so great. He's been practicing this in front of the mirror, I think.
So you've got the confidence of the First Minister. This poll suggests that you don't have the confidence of the public.
Well, look, I'm very clear about the important role I've got as the Health Secretary in making sure that we have an NHS that's recovering from the pandemic.
But the public don't have confidence in you for that, this poll suggests.
Well, the First Minister's very clear about the important role I've got, and I'm determined to make sure...
The public are very clear as well in this poll, 61 to 31. They think you should quit. Yeah,
well, I'm very clear about the important role I've got and the support I've got from the First Minister to make sure that I continue to do everything I can to support the NHS going forward and to make sure that we've got an NHS that's meeting the demands that it's going to face over the course of the next couple of months, which are going to be challenging during the winter period. And the campaign we're launching today is to also encourage the public to play their part in helping to support us during the winter period.
But public confidence matters, doesn't it?
Yeah, of course it does. And I recognise some of the public concern around this issue. And what I did was, as soon as it became aware that the iPad had been used for personal purposes, unbeknown to me, I took immediate action in order to reimburse the Parliament for those full costs. But I've got an important job that I need to get on with, and that is as Health Secretary.
Does this distract from that important job?
No, from my point of view, I've been very clear about getting on with my job as Health Secretary. You can see over the course of the last couple of weeks, I've continued to focus on doing that job, and this campaign that we're launching today is an example of the work we're doing in order to make sure that our NHS is best prepared as we can for the winter months.
Well, this is the problem, I think, with this, is that the story becomes this, that story overwhelms everything else. So, I mean, he could be out, ordering fish and chips, and people will be saying, "Oh, what with the iPad and all this?" Or actually, it's really realistic. He's supposed to be doing the job of the Health Secretary. And every second question, or even second question, every 2 questions per sentence are actually, what did you do with your iPad? Does the Pope know you were watching the Celtic game? All this type of stuff. And it's just like, it just goes on and on and on, See, I know the sad face. Well, I have to just check that sad face again. It's quite something there.
Confidence of the First Minister. This poll...
Look at that. That is quality. I don't know how long he took to practice that there.
And he's got it fixed.
Quite impressive anyway. Right. Okay. So why, Mark? Why is this going on?
He needs to... When a nationalist poll tells him that 60-odd% want him to go.
Oh, that's a good point, yes.
Then I think that tells him everything. He should just go. I predicted he'd go by the end of the week, but he just seems to be hanging on and hanging on. It shows weak leadership from Humza, to be honest with you.
Well, the question I have though is that, right, think if you're Humza Yousaf, just imagine, then you're thinking, well, you could keep him, but the option getting rid of him is worse, right? So he must be keeping him because whatever the other thing is worse.
I think he doesn't have a replacement. I don't think he has anyone that...
Well, if there's always somebody you can put up, some kind of stooge, right?
Well, that's what they usually do.
Yeah, that's going to go up there. But I mean, is he really going
Well, that's the only reason I can think of. I mean, why on earth?
I think it's gone on so far now. He has to. Humza's thinking, well, I'm going to have to carry on backing him, because if I don't now, it's why didn't I do it 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks?
Yeah, but it's best to cauterize the wound, as it were.
Yeah.
Right? Cut him off and just say, right, okay, we're moving on, because this is going to drag out. As they say, this becomes the story. Every time he stands up to speak about the health service, it's like, okay, tell us about the iPad, and then a new revelation will come out, whatever stuff, and eventually they'll be getting his sons on to, cry in front of the camera or whatever. It's what's the word? It's like it's
unrelenting.
Unrelenting, and it's unseemly as well. I think, to have this kind of drama going out on the political screens. Mary,
I got told that he once he lied to the media were never ever going to let this go, because that's one thing the media are quite strong on. If a politician openly lies to them like he did.
Yes.
They're gonna call him out and carry on calling him out until he goes.
I just don't see the advantage. I mean, okay, you need to, at some point, you need to cut your losses. I mean, it should never have got to this point. Basically, you do have to cut people off if they don't do the right thing, and it happens from time to time.
But don't you think that under Nicola Sturgeon, in the SNP, there was loads of people who just brazened it out?
Oh.
And they just kept going. I mean, there's Patrick Grady.
But I don't think the media. I don't think the media was as strong when Sturgeon was in charge, and I don't think the media would have. If Sturgeon was in charge, I don't think the media would have kept on calling him out. But they're still doing stories about him, and they're still pushing him.
But I'm saying that I think that's what Humza has been used to. He's seen colleagues, even like John Swinney or anyone. Been under a lot of pressure from the media, and they've managed to get through and carry on.
Well, I mean,
so
the question
he's probably hoping that Matheson can, but I don't think he can.
If it goes on for another week, maybe it would blow over. And then, but it just seems very poor, as you say, Mary. It seems very poor leadership in general, and we'll just have to see how it goes on. I mean, today we had another story that he got. What was this? Denied being a season ticket holder. It's all this. It's gotten to this level, and there was questions about whether it was legal streaming or not. It's just kind of going to roll on and on and on. If he's found to have done illegal streaming, which he says, as part of the inquiry, it's like, can you not just answer the question? No, I didn't. Yes, I didn't. Yes, I did. It's part of the inquiry now. And of course, this inquiry will be a whitewash, because it's done by the parliamentary corporate body. And on that, we have two Greens, because the presiding officer is a Green, and an SNP, and I think a Labour and a Conservative. So basically, there's a 3-2 advantage straight away. 3-2 advantage straight away.
Well, hopefully the media will just keep hounding him, and that's the way that we'll manage to get him out.
As Humza Yousaf might say, whitewash white, or wash white, whatever.
Or we managed to get our billboards up.
Oh, yes.
They worked on Sturgeon. They could work on Matheson as well.
They could work. Then, but time is limited. Please do donate to them if you can. If Matheson does get the boot before the end of the campaign, the money will be used for Abolish Holyrood campaign, billboard campaign that we are planning. All right. Okay, well, we will see how this issue goes on. Next up, we're going to go on to Alex Salmond. Okay, so let's... Okay. Right, it's great to have you with us tonight. We've been seeing your chats rolling in there, Mary. How are you coping today?
Yes, it's lively, all right. Got some live wires out there.
Right, very good. Okay, so is revenge a served? No, I can't even say that. Is revenge a dish best served cold? At the weekend, it was announced that Alex Salmond is launching a new case against the Scottish Government for damages and loss of earnings of £3 million. So let's go back in time a little bit, and we'll go through try brief as I can about the whole story. Okay, it's a Me Too era, and everyone's worried about powerful bosses powerful men who abused women as part in their workplace. That led to some high-profile arrests, of course, and eventual prison sentences, most notably Harvey Weinstein, the movie producer. At the time, Nicola Sturgeon decided to set up a new Scottish Government procedure to investigate harassment complaints against ministers, and notably former ministers. Oh, so I wonder who that could have been. But most people kind of forget or don't really know that Salmond had already been involved and admitted inappropriate workplace behaviour before his trial. And in fact, he referenced it in his trial as a defence, that he had admitted that he had done the famous Sleepy Cuddles incident, where he and a member of his staff had fumbled on the bed after a glass of limoncello, as you do, Anyway, but Mary, you may laugh.
I think limoncello sales went through the roof after that.
You may laugh,
an aphrodisiac.
But this was a workplace harassment.
Okay.
The lady reported him for it, and he asked her if she wanted to move job, and she said no, and so on, and it was all recorded. Now, that incident was actually raised to attempted rape in the court case. But anyway, so Sturgeon knew this. So some people have said that the reason that she put in this policy was to nail Sturgeon in it. I mean, how could she not know? She went on and on about how she didn't know. Mary, I mean, you must have something to say about that.
About Sturgeon not knowing?
Yeah, she didn't know. She was always complaining, saying that she didn't know that Salmond had his sleepy cuddles and all this type of stuff.
Well, I think the rumours had been going around for years about his behaviour. I think everybody knew what he was like.
Yes.
And what to expect. So, I mean,
think everyone in politics knew.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, everyone knew. So how would Nicola not know?
Yeah, I think she must have known.
And of course, when she was questioned, it was just a lot of, I don't remember, and prevarication as usual. So.
Right. So anyway, of course Salmond was put into this investigation process, but before even the outcome was announced, he said it was unfair and announced a judicial review of the process in the courts, which he won famously. And the review said that the application of the process had been unlawful. Now, that didn't actually say that he hadn't done the things. In fact, the result of the investigation was that he had acted inappropriately, but because of the bias in the investigation, the famous quote is that it was tainted with apparent bias because of the official who carried out the investigation had contact with the complainers prior to the probe. Okay, as you do. Salmond got £500,000 for his legal costs, and the whole thing was deemed unfair. But almost immediately he was arrested, put in trial, accused of 2 charges of attempted rape, plus a whole bunch of sexual assault charges. Now, most of these accusations, in my opinion, didn't really reach the level of criminality. And in fact, that's what the court decided in the end. I mean, it really appeared to me and many observers that prosecutors were throwing everything at the case to try and see to make it stick. You had things like touching somebody's hair, and that was counting as some kind of sexual assault, for example. Mark, what did you think of the actual trial itself?
I thought it was. I wasn't too enamoured with it. I think it was. They were really going after him. I think they wanted to discredit him and get him out of politics. In my view, I think it was and I think that's been proven that it was a stitch up. Well, most of it. I'm not saying all of it, because there was one, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but there was one not proven.
Yes, there's one not proven.
One not proven.
I think the Sleepy Cuddles incident.
Yeah, and the rest were just thrown out. I honestly think it was a stitch-up, political stitch-up, and it didn't sit well with me. And I'm no fan of Alex Salmond, but I do think it was... I think the SNP were trying to get rid of him, and I think they were trying to discredit him and trying to get rid of him from ever coming back into politics.
Yeah, so they tried first of all with the inquiry, and then when that didn't work, they went to the court case. Mary,
I was just about to say that. It was actually very, very serious, because if he had been found guilty of some of these, he could have spent the rest of his life in jail.
That's right. And if Sturgeon,
so this was no like, oh well, you get a slap on the wrist for a bit being a little bit touchy feely or whatever. He could actually have died in jail.
That's right. And of course, Sturgeon might still have been president for life, and they would never have got out in that case, or maybe they'd be given a pardon, sent off to St Helena, like Napoleon, something like that. In his that's not spoiler alert,
which we haven't seen yet. No.
In his defence, Salmond said there was a plot against him. He said, but the problem with this whole thing is it's difficult to determine there was a plot against him because we're not allowed to know the names of the women who accused him, which is a bit weird because the court found their claims to be false. So why should they get anonymity for claims that were not criminal, right? If it was criminal, you could say, right, this person did a crime against me, so I want anonymity. But the court said this person did nothing to you, didn't do the crime to you, so it's not criminal. So why do you still have anonymity? That's the thing I don't really understand. We could discuss that later, perhaps.
And that's what got Craig Murray put in jail.
Oh, that's right. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Sentenced to 8 months and served 4 months for jigsaw identification. Not even saying who the people were straight out, but we all know that the people were members of the Scottish government. Everyone knows that. So
there's a question here, though, Mark.
Go ahead.
And I don't know if any of us know the answer, but people are asking, why is he suing the Scottish government? Because then he would get paid the £3 million by the taxpayers. Why isn't he suing the SNP or?
Because I think the government that because the SNP are the government, I think that's why.
It's because the inquiry was held by the Scottish government.
Yeah,
that's why. So is it so?
And the people were working for the Scottish government.
Yeah, people working for the Scottish government. So I think one thing that comes out a lot when you're talking to people, especially Salmond supporters on Twitter and social media, is they're always like, "Oh, but he was declared innocent, so nothing happened." That is not actually the case. He admitted by himself that he had done inappropriate workplace behaviour. He also had an affair with another staffer that wasn't even part of any of this. So, he was on his behaviour wasn't that great. Now, we can talk about what his lawyer said about him and so on as well. But this is the thing. This is, it's not like we're talking about Mr. Innocent here in the sense of innocent of criminal charges, yes, but not innocent of poor behaviour. So let's go back to this current case. Is it all about the money? Or do you think it's about revenge, Mark?
I don't think it's about the money, and I don't think it's about the money at all. I think he wants his day in court, and I think he wants to show everything that he's got in evidence that he was stitched up. I think he's after revenge more than the money. I think the money is a byproduct, and I think it's something that he's quite happy to accept. But I don't believe there's going to be any kind of out of court settlement where it's kept quiet. I think he wants everything in the open and everything out there that he's got in evidence. And I think he's waiting for this.
Perhaps there is an out of court settlement in the sense of, I'll become your SNP leader if you drop this type of thing. I don't know. I just made that up right there, but you never know. That's the thing. I mean, it's all about power, isn't it? Really, if it's not about the money, what's it about? Revenge, power.
Yeah, I think revenge, and I think he believes, and he still believes, that if he brings down the SNP, the support will come to his party.
Yeah, well, good luck with that.
And I think that's what he believes.
Yes,
it's not what I don't think it'll happen like that. But I do think I think it's going to be pretty explosive what he's got.
Right, but is it going to put him necessarily in a good light? Because it still reminds people like me will still say he's still a gropey, gropey Salmond. So a sleepy cuddle Salmond. It's all right. He made his case against the Scottish government, but okay, it was a bit more come out. It's just exposing dirty laundry of the Scottish government. Is that suits our purposes more than his purposes, surely.
Yeah, and I personally think it'll do both of them harm. It'll do the campaign of independence harm. I don't think he'll come out of it brilliantly, but I also don't think I think there could be criminal charges brought from this. In my opinion, I think there could be something of criminal charges brought after this. It's just my opinion, but that's what I think. I think there could be some serious stuff. I think it could be explosive. And I know a lot of people are saying, well, this is going to be taxpayers' money. Well, I don't actually quite mind to pay a little bit of money towards what's going to come out, because I do think it's going to be explosive what's going to come out.
Let's hope so.
Well, let's hope so. I'm going to now to, I said earlier on, we're going to have special guest Dean Thomson on the show. I'm going to just bring him in a little bit early and maybe see if he's got anything to say to round off this section on Salmond. Let's see, where are you, Dean? Are you with us?
Hello.
Hi there. How are you? Good to see you. You've been listening to the conversation there in the background, I presume. And have you any thoughts on what have I got here? Any thoughts on this action, really?
I think there is a lot more to drop. There is more out there. We have to be careful what we say, especially with jigsaw identification, but yes, I think that Salmond is almost certainly looking to have some more light shine on some of the darker corners of this. Mm-hmm. His behaviour was terrible, but there is more there.
Yes, I think so. I think it's
especially in the nature of the identity of some of the accusers, and don't forget there is a prospect of perjury.
Yes, that's right.
By one of the accusers.
Yes.
So there's a lot more there, and the whole reason that he won the £500,000 off of the Scottish Government for the botched investigation was because it was tainted by apparent bias, and the person who was overseeing it, now retired former civil servant, had spoken to at least one of the accusers in advance, and there was a question of, did they then go out and try and find more trawling around? Yes, there's more
to come out. Well, that will keep us happy. Negative headlines across the front pages. We can't get enough of those. We love them. We love them. It's, of course, about SNP, Salmond, and Nicola Sturgeon. That's great. We will be, what have we got here? Further ensure the nationalist movement goes down the drain. Picture Alex Salmond pushing Humza Yousaf down a toilet with a plunger for the full effect. There we go. I'll leave you with that image for a few seconds. We'll be right back. We're going to be talking more about Dean and the Scottish National Investment Bank. All right. There we go. Right, where are we? So back to you've been looking at, first of all, Dean, a little bit. Thanks for being with us in this cold November evening. It says here, lost my space. So, Dean, you are a former teacher, a lecturer, and writer on Scottish politics. Regular viewers will know Dean was on the show a few weeks ago to talk about the Scottish government's response to what's going on in Gaza and Israel terrorist atrocities. So, given that the hostages are being released, how do you see the situation going from here, Dean? And do you think this will help or hinder Israel's determination to eradicate Hamas?
Well, the government in Israel's caught between two equally important but competing priorities. One, the internal domestic political pressure to make sure the priority is to get the hostages back. And be under no illusions how much pressure Netanyahu's government is under domestically from that.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And at the same time, that government's priority, which they regard as equally, if not more important, is to destroy Hamas's capacity to ever pose a threat again. So trying to balance those competing priorities, sadly, they do sometimes compete. I would say nobody should be under any misapprehension that this will turn into a permanent ceasefire. It's not a ceasefire. It's a sort of temporary cessation of hostilities. Hamas is using hostages to buy time to reorganize, and Israel's getting the hostages out. But
not just necessarily to reorganize, but also to wait until international pressure builds on Israel as well. And I think that's probably going to be a key factor as things go on, right?
But I don't think it will work. Israel's hell-bent, to use that unfortunate terminology. This is going to end with Hamas's defenestration. They're gone. They're done. That's how this ends. You don't break into Israel and slaughter at least 1,200 Jews in the worst since the Holocaust, the end of the Holocaust in 1945, and then say to you the only Jewish state in the world, but you're not allowed to do what every other country in the world does, which is the right to identify your own defensive response. Hamas is gone. It's just a question of when.
Well, I think it is going to be a little bit difficult going into the south, or perhaps see how just with the whole thing of ratcheting up all the children are dying, kind of Hamas-led propaganda that seems to infiltrate the West to such an extent.
And
but
people like Owen Jones don't help that either. I mean, his response when he was shown the video of the brutality that Hamas did was to sort of try and cast doubt. I didn't see video footage, I think he said in his video. I did not see video footage of women being sexually assaulted by Hamas. I mean, and this was collected by the IDF.
Well, yeah, I think this is
collecting this data. In a war zone, it will be the IDF.
Someone mentioned this the other day. It's like, what is the burden of proof? I mean, if you went to a criminal investigation, the burden of proof is just a reasonable doubt. But Israel seems to have to produce, endless reams of things. And that reminds me a little bit about, say, Scottish nationalists who are always saying, well, prove this to me. And they don't care. That's the thing. So you end up being in a loop of providing data and GERS reports and all that, and then you say, I don't believe this stuff anyway. Right, let's return to Scottish matters. Now, you have done this article here. It is about the Scottish Investment Bank. Let's see if I've got it here. I think this one here. It's on your Substack, which if you look up Dean Thomson Substack, you'll find is very interesting about how the Scottish National Investment Bank doesn't actually live up to its claims, maybe as a way to say that. So let's start with the numbers. How much has it lost us so far?
Well, at the moment, the SNIB is on full salesman mode, which is what really caught my eye the other day in the Scotsman with the paid advert, which of course is our money that they've spent to buy that. They've been subject to a lot of scrutiny, and they're making a lot of noise now in response. But rather than address the legitimate questions that Harry Clinch, who's a financial journalist at the Disruption Banking, people like we have been making, and politicians have been asking, they've not responded to any of that substantively. Instead, they're trying to push a sales switch, which annoys me. I mean, £460 million long-term investment, but it's the return rate of 2%. Now, we shouldn't get too caught up about that. I mean, sure, you can make the argument, investment bank of this nature, there's a high risk.
But 2% is less than you can get from a commercial bank, right?
I would expect more than 2%, but it's a high risk investment. The issue really is there's no dispassionate professional oversight board as mandated by law, the Holyrood Act of Parliament.
Right.
Now, we're waiting 3 years for that, and the SNP keeps saying it's in the works, but it's been 3 years, and we can begin to point out areas where the bank has been investing our money, and there are, to bring it back to maybe Gordon Jackson QC, it's not quite passing the smell test. Mm-hmm. Now, there could be very legitimate answers to all of this, but there are two categories that I have been concerned about. One, with the Circularity Scotland case, mm-hmm. £9 million was invested into Circularity for the return debacle. Now, the problem I have with that is, we all know, private investors were waiting to invest in that, but they did not invest their money until the legal situation was clarified with the UK Internal Market Act. But the SNIB just went straight in with the £9 million loan. And we know, thanks to Times reporting and the Freedom of Information request that we got, that Nicola Sturgeon did intervene in that process. I'll leave others to judge conclusions that they may or may not want to reach from that. I would not possibly comment. But there is a question mark there over, there's no dispassionate oversight board. There is a question of potential political interference in the bank. And whether
surely, I mean, I was talking with Mary about this earlier on, but surely the whole point of setting up a national investment bank is to politically interfere. That's the point, right? You want to get your pet projects out. Now, I'm just going to read this part of this is what they're trying to do here. They've got in their mission, they've got to grow a fairer, more sustainable economy and society through the journey to net zero. Well, that's a green priority. That's not actually a business priority. To scale up innovation and technology, what's a bit better? Building a more competitive and productive economy. Okay, we can go with that. To transform communities, making them places where everyone thrives. Well, that doesn't mean anything at all. I mean, so there's nothing there like to make money for the Scots, to give a return on investment, right?
Well, they're basically saying that what they're trying to do is they're trying to invest in things that would be too dodgy for regular banks and institutions and investment funds to invest in.
A national investment and development bank, you would expect, would be going out there making high-risk investments in areas for potential future growth, new tech or whatever. And instead, it's kind of some of the investment list, when you go down the list, some of it's rather boring investments that you would not anticipate the SNIB would be focusing so much on. But 9 million with circularity is bad enough with the potential for political interference. But what's more alarming is the potential for cronyism that's arisen. Now, £7.5 million being invested in a firm which was loss-making, which had not registered its filed its documents with Companies House, just manages to get £7.5 million from the SNIB, and that business happened to be partly owned by an SNIB director. Now, I did try and get the SNIB to comment on that, and they assured me that all due diligence was followed, and they have a registry of interests that are declared by directors, but I'm not allowed to see it.
I mean, it seems a bit weird. I mean, due diligence means you look at all the paperwork, and if the paperwork says your company's not even registered, then that's no. I mean, there's hope for us all, perhaps, if you get your political pals in power, and then you say, "All right, can you give me? I've got this idea, whatever it is, but it's green, and cleaning windmill blades, right? Okay." And how much is that? Oh, 10 million. Okay, there you go. That's fine. That type of thing.
The ministers are directors. Is that correct, Dean?
The directors of the SNIB, in this case, the 7.5 million case, it was an SNIB director who partly owned the company that got the 7.5 million. But there are cases where senior business figures who are on Scottish government business advisory boards, like Scottish Enterprise Board. There are lots of advisory boards for various government departments. They bring in business leaders and they go on the board. They get paid remuneration for turning up, and they give advice and help for guiding government policy, which is fine. But some of those figures have also had their businesses get money from the SNIB. And again, none of this would be particularly alarming if Section 29 of the Holyrood Act of Parliament was in place, where there was a dispassionate, professional oversight board that we could have confidence in, but it doesn't exist.
Oversight is an
presumably the clause didn't state that it had to be done within a certain time frame.
Yes, there's no by this date. And of course, I'm not a lawyer. My master's was economics, but from a layman's reading, one presumes it was meant to have been in place from the get-go.
Yes, of course.
And the absence of it, it takes time to set up, but it's been 3 years now.
Yes.
And there's a growing number of examples where there's also the £5 million case. Let's not forget. There was the £5 million case where £5 million ended up invested in a firm by one of the SNIB's own directors. The 7.5 million was in a company which was owned by a brother of an employee of the SNIB. There are
conflicts of interest everywhere.
Abound.
Lack of transparency and oversight.
Thanks for that, Dean. We have, if you would like to, it's a good story. I think it's a really interesting article. If you'd like to have a look at it, please go to Dean's Substack. And we'd like to have you back on the show again fairly soon. You've got your next appearance, so we'll see what interesting things you've got for us then. Okay, so we'll talk to you soon. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers, Dean.
Right, well, that was Dean Thomson, former lecturer and writer in Scottish politics, telling us all about the corruption in the Scottish National Investment Bank. If you do like the show, please do donate to the show, or better still, actually, donate to our SackMatheson billboard campaign. You know you want to send a message to Humza, send a message to Matheson, send a message to the general public that you have had enough. Stop the lies. I mean, can we not just have a proven lie or, kicked out? Really, help us out here. Help yourself out.
Be
Help
part
Scotland
of the
out.
solution.
That's it. Yes, exactly. Coming up, Mark Z is going to talk a little bit about the judiciary and its sweeping changes. Right, Mark, you're up.
Yes, it's the power grab by the Scottish Government on the judiciary. Now, Lady Dorian, who's I'm going to have to go to my notes on a lot of this, is the Lord Justice Clerk. Now, she was in committee yesterday for the to talk about this. Now, it was quite a damning appearance. She was quite damning on the Scottish Government. She called them undemocratic, a constitutionally undemocratic power grab. The changes that they want to enact, they want to take into its own hands powers to control lawyers. Number two, they want to remove aspects of the Court of Succession oversight of the legal profession. And three, impose itself as a regulator along with the Lord President. These are the changes that they want to make. Now, Lord Dorian went to committee yesterday, and she was very damning on this. She quoted, she said, "We don't normally go to committee where with when they're talking about legislation. Me being here today shows you how serious we are taking this and how we want it, that we completely disagree with it. I think it's an absolute scandal, and it's one of the most dangerous bills I think we're likely to see. It's only at stage one. So I'm hoping it won't go no further, because if
who's pushing it, Mark?
That's exactly what I was going to ask.
Sorry to jump in there.
No, it's fine.
But who's pushing it?
The Scottish Government are pushing it. They're the ones, the SNP Greens, that are pushing this.
Yeah, but is there a particular reason? Are they saying, okay, we're doing this because we want to streamline processes, blah, blah, blah?
They want to take it away from the Lord. They want to take the power away from the Lord Advocate and give it to Parliament. They want Parliament to have the power over the judicial.
And
so
what do they say?
Of powers.
What do they say is the advantage of that?
Well, they think it's more. Democratic for them as a Parliament to have the control. But there's no separation of powers.
I've never heard of such a thing before.
It's not. You don't get. I think it. She quoted yesterday that you do not get this in democratic countries, because you have separation of powers. Now, yes. If this goes ahead, it will be one of the only countries, democratic countries, that will have this, because you have, it's the likes of Russia and China and Korea that don't have, have the power over the judiciary. So if this carries on, if this goes ahead, then I think it's really dangerous. I really do. I think the judiciary needs to be separate. In fact, the judges have already stated back in August that if this goes ahead, they will consider strike action.
That would be something.
That's how serious they think it is.
Well, already we have the situation with the Lord Advocate as a member of the cabinet, and that is bad enough. We have this. It means that the government.
So wait a minute, they've got Dorothy Bain in the cabinet.
Yes, that's right.
So there's a thinking on our side that they're able to control her anyway.
Well, of course.
So why are they wanting to take her?
It's not necessarily a matter of control. They may not be, but there's always the element of people thinking that there would be. And in some cases, there might be the case that it might be, right? You know what I'm saying? So it's the idea of separation of powers is to get rid of that idea, inbuilt corruption straight away. The judiciary is separate. The judiciary can then scrutinise the parliament. How can the judiciary scrutinise the parliament and the parliament has more power over it? That's not the way it works. These are separate branches of government, and here is in the UK, it's not quite as defined as, say, for example, in the States or so on. But this seems to me to be a step backwards. It's very typical of the urge of nationalists to want to centralise and control everything, and get under the thumb of one person, and the idea that Nicola Sturgeon, for example, is all powerful, and she can just put her thumb on the head of police, put her thumb, or at that time, or Dorothy Bain, or whoever it is, at any point you can push down and put political pressure on them. Instead, because they're right next to her, they're in the cabinet or they're there. That's not the way it's supposed to work. It's supposed to be like she calls up the judiciary and says, "Can you do this for me?" They just tell her to F off. That's what's supposed to happen. In fact, you shouldn't even contemplate doing that. And we can say the same for Humzad. Using Nicola Sturgeon because the power seemed to be much more concentrated in her, but this just shows that perhaps even beyond Nicola, that this type of centralisation, centralised control continues anyway.
Well, she quotes and says that it is constitutionally inept. She really doesn't hold back with her words and how she called this. I watched the committee, and I really think that the judiciary think this is quite a real serious issue.
Oh yeah,
heard the likes of Lottie Dunlop on Twitter.
Well, of course they don't want to be under political pressure. They want a situation, where they can say to the government, this is your thing, you're doing some illegal stuff. But the implication there is that the Parliament wants to do it so they can do illegal stuff. Right, so that's the
why would they want this power?
Why would they want it? Of course, that's what it ends up. So these people don't have any constitutional understanding whatsoever. They don't even know what a constitution is. If they actually went to the States, for example, and studied the US Constitution, everyone moans about it. But, they don't know anything about it and understood how it was put together, and all the papers and the Federalist Papers and all this stuff. It's amazing the amount of thought that the Americans put into this thing, and it's lasted for such a long time. And even the Americans don't understand it all that well. And I'm not saying I understand it all well, but there are certain principles in it that work, and these people don't have a clue.
There's no doubt about it in my mind, and there's no doubt about it in the legal minds as well, that this is a power grab. Nothing more, nothing less. It's a power grab. They want total control over judiciary. Now, I think that is highly dangerous, and I do believe the judicial system have said the same. If you listen to Lottie Dunlop on Twitter and read his tweets, he's continuously talking about this, and it is a power grab.
Now, what power does this committee have? I mean, how many people are on the committee? Do we have any idea?
Well, they'll recommend the law, and then it'll be made into law.
I think it's just they're at stage one, which means that it gets discussed at committee level, and then it gets passed on. So
who proposed it?
I don't know who it was in the government that proposed it, but
yeah.
Well, notably Maggie Chapman is on the committee, and we'll maybe talk a little bit about her later. Interesting segment there. I think considering this Scottish government's authoritarian tendencies, well, we should be afraid. And it's quite, interesting these judges are getting a bit of a wake-up call after because of that, because many of them actually have supported this administration anyway. We'll be back in a second. Mary's going to talk more about the Greens abusing Scotland. How much more abuse can Scotland take from these toxic Greens? She'll talk about that in just a sec. Right, there you go, Mary.
Well, this week I read some pretty shocking headlines. In any normal week, one of these headlines would be enough. But for all of them to happen in 1 week. So let me just read out the headlines. The first one was 10-year time bomb for Scottish homeowners who face fines and mortgage rejections if they do not have heat pumps by 2033.
Well, that's quite soon.
Well, it's 10 years away,
yes.
But yes, when you're talking about investing a lot of money in your house, then it's pretty soon. The second headline, so I mean, that's pretty shocking. The second headline was ScotGov rent freeze loophole blamed as private rents soar by up to 22% in a year.
22%, maybe?
In a year.
Okay.
In some places. And the third headline, so that's two headlines. The third headline, North Sea supported jobs have halved in the last decade by 200,000 despite Tory support. So, three of those quite shocked me this week. But then I realised that all of these headlines, the heat pumps, the rent freeze, the North Sea jobs halved, they're all policies of the Greens, who have foisted their batshit crazy communist eco-nut job policies on Scotland,
right,
aided and abetted by the weak, clueless and talentless SNP, who have got no policies of their own. And it's really pretty shocking. I mean, the first one, the heat pumps, it's Patrick Harvie who's behind this, of course. He wants everyone to replace their gas boilers with heat pumps by 2033. As I said, it's been called a 10-year time bomb. The Scottish Government will be consulting banks and building societies and getting them involved to make complying with the laws relating to your property a condition of your mortgage and or your home and buildings insurance. So basically, if you don't comply, you might not get a mortgage, or you won't get a mortgage, and you won't be able to get home insurance.
Completely illegal.
It's absolutely ridiculous.
Well, it's illegal.
Yes, I think that's the case. I mean,
challenges that. The first person to challenge that, there'll be thousands of challenges, by the way. But the first
they're trying to get the banks and the building societies to do their dirty work for them, so that they have to say to the people, rather than and then the Scottish Government will say, "Oh, it's not us; it's the banks and the building societies who won't do this." So Harvey, he was called out because they haven't done any kind of study into how much replacing your boiler with a heat pump actually costs. So they've got no idea what the normal cost would be.
It feels like to me like a religious crusade, really. Basically, the idea is that somehow gas is bad. Now, okay, let's just say, if we admit, let's say gas contributes to global warming, whatever it is. Right, well, then plant some more trees or mitigate it, because the boiler works well. You turn the tap, hot water, it works great. Heat pumps, noisy, inefficient. They're ugly on
big
buildings.
And ugly.
They're really, really
they ruin
ugly.
The landscape.
I looked on Twitter and there was a picture of some guy and he had them installed and he was all kind of proud of them, and I was like, that's on a traditional building, it looked hideous. And I always like to think, well, I mean, who's really pushing this? Is it heat pump manufacturers? I
don't think so, because they can't even keep up with the demand.
But you can imagine them coming into the government and saying,
you can't. I know for a fact, because I actually have one in my building where I live. There's a heat pump in it. It works perfectly well for my size of house and the way my house is. It actually works perfectly well and it's great. But you can't get it serviced. I've tried. You can't get. They don't have the people to service it that are trained up. I phoned numerous amount of companies, and they all say the same. We've not got anyone that's trained up to service it.
And it will need a lot of servicing. We had a lot of these. We lived in Japan for 18 years. We lived in Florida for 8 years. So 26 years of these things. And I can tell you, they need servicing a lot.
Yeah.
But moving on. So that was the heat pumps. It's even worse, actually, for landlords. The landlords have only got 5 years to comply. Right. So we're in the middle of a cost of living crisis. We're in the middle of a housing emergency. And then if landlords are told, well, we don't know how much it's going to be, but you're going to have to invest in these heat pumps. And these heat pumps cost thousands and thousands. There's estimates of people in rural areas may have to pay up to £30,000 for this. Now, if you don't live in rural areas, I presume it's going to be less than that. But nobody seems to know what the cost for people is going to be. So the first thing that's going to happen is that more of these landlords are saying, it's not worth my while anymore. I'm going to give up. And then the housing crisis, the rental properties crisis will be much, much worse. So trying to move on quickly, about the rents. So another green policy, and one that Ross Greer loves, is that, but I think it was proposed by Patrick Harvey. There's the rent freeze has basically meant that rents in Scotland have just been soaring. The average rent for a 2-bedroom property in Scotland, which is the most common size of property in the private rented sector, is £841 a month, which is up £105 in a year. That's 14% across Scotland. But in Glasgow, rents are up by over 22%. And this is all because of the 3% rent cap. And you might say, well, how does that work? It was introduced by the Greens last year. So although landlords can only increase a sitting tenant's rent by 3% when they get a new tenant, so when they get rid of those ones, if they bring in a new tenant, they can put the rent up as much as they like.
Yeah, so I was thinking about that. Yeah, what they would do is they get students, right? So give a student, get them out after the term's finished, bump up the rent, and then they get another student in there, and it just goes up.
And the rent's much, much higher. Yeah, 22% in 1 year.
Just for example.
That's the effect. I mean, we've been talking about this since last year on the show. I've brought this up many times. They forgive them.
Badly thought out policy again.
Oh, they do know what they're doing. That's the problem.
It's a great headline. That's all they do. It's a great headline. Oh, we're going to freeze rent. That means it's going to be cheaper for everybody. They don't know this. They don't understand the policy.
What the effects are going to be.
You just see a headline and they think, well, that sounds great.
Well, that's and they don't care is the bigger
Neil says
point.
Here that they had to shaft the landlords because they're evil. Anyway, they hate landlords. Yeah. So it's just rubbish. Anyway. Okay, Mary.
Sorry, last headline was just that 200,000 oil and gas supported jobs have been lost in the last decade.
Well, there's no surprise there, considering that they hate oil and gas industry, and who in the right mind would invest in producing new stuff in there? I mean, like
200,000 jobs.
Grangemouth, they just letting it go. Because I mean, if I was the billionaire guy who runs that, I'd be like, deal with this. I'm going somewhere more friendly to business. I'm not going to deal with these nutters.
The Greens are just anti-business,
anti-human. Absolutely. I would say.
They don't like anybody making money.
No, of course, quite happy to make their own money and ride around in their
fancy bikes.
Fancy bikes. Their government supplied electric motors. Right. Okay, Mary. Very good. All right. We're time is running on, and you still haven't got to the highlight of the week.
Oh, but it is coming
after this short wee message, which is thank you for being with us as we go through the horror show of Scottish politics. What is? I mean, it's just unending. If you can, please subscribe to the show and leave comments on YouTube so we can grow there, says there. But really, we want you to like. Please do that. You can also make a donation, as we've talked about. Buy a T-shirt or a mug.
Mark, it's coming up to Christmas.
Oh, yes.
So everyone should be.
Yes, everyone should get a mug. Abolish Holyrood mugs on the site right now.
Who wouldn't want that under their Christmas tree?
Impress your friends and make your enemies cry. That's what we're looking for out of these presents. And you can do all of that. Tell your friends about us and all of that. Okay, so here we are. We are at the highlight of the week. It is Zoomer of the Week.
To get through all of these pretty quickly.
Right, okay, I'll try my best to get through mine. Mine is Ben Page of Ipsos. Now, remember we mentioned Ipsos, the polling company, earlier on. It's that time of the year when they release their biased polls. This Mr. Ben Page is the global head of the company. I think he's an Englishman, but he's in New York, so as the song goes. Today, they told us with a straight face that the SNP had a double-digit lead over Labour in Scotland. said SNP had 40% and Labour 30%. And not only that support for Scottish independence is at 54%. 54% excluding don't knows. That comes down to 51% yes and 43% no when you include the don't knows.
When was the poll done? 2013?
That's a good point. Now, I'm a big fan of this chart, which you can get by going to Wikipedia. They changed the colours, unfortunately, but you can see here, this is all the polls down, a vertical line. And these are this column in the blue here, the kind of lilac colour, is all the yes results. All of these results going way back, basically, for way back to 2021 are only, the positive ones are only from Ipsos and from this other company called Find Out Now that now has discredited poll results. So we have to go back to March 2021 to find any pollster that has over 50%. So when I posted that, I've talked about this last year, and Ben Page, the CEO, said that we'd have to wait until actual election results to confirm that their predictions were correct. And I think that is a bit weird because the whole point of polling is to predict results. It's it's not, we'll wait till we get the real result and then we'll figure it out. It's nonsense. The whole point is to predict it and to predict it accurately, right? And it's also weird because we've had multiple real world elections that show the SNP vote collapsing. Of course, there was Rutherglen, Hamilton, Western, and loads of council elections as well, not to mention our own eyes and ears as we walk down the streets and talk to people and whatever, saying never vote for SNP again.
You'd have to be an idiot not to know what's going on, really.
Well, perhaps they're so remote, that's the thing. But by contrast, Renfield and Wilson just came out with their poll a few hours ago, which said that Labour had just beaten the SNP in the Westminster vote in Scotland. Labour with 36% and the SNP with 34%. So it's just all the way down. But today he came on to Twitter and came back at one of our followers and said that we can either believe that there's a conspiracy to manipulate results or that our results are accurate. I'm like, come on. Neither me or anyone who is questioning these results are conspiracy theorists. We look at the results compared with every other polling and we say, why are yours 10% higher? Why do yours always favour the SNP? That's the thing. The data is right there.
Because they only talk to SNP supporters.
Well, it seems that way, or they weight it in a certain way. And it's just really very strange. Now, some people have said, for example, this article, that it's because they get millions of pounds a year from the Scottish government. Well, that may or may not be the case. Money does talk. Undaunted nationalists continue to use these numbers to justify their case. It's going to be in the front page of the National tomorrow, without a doubt. Just as anti-Semites use the Gaza Health Ministry numbers to make their case, delusional nationalists are all over this to also destroy a country, our country at this time. Ipsos numbers are not to be trusted. Ben Page, you are my Zoomer of the week.
Thank you, Mark.
There we go. Mary, you are up next.
No, I think it's Mark.
No,
is it me? Okay, I'll go next.
Right, okay, coming up, Mary.
My Zoomer of the week is Siobhan Brown, who none of us have ever heard of. She is the Scottish Minister for Victims and Community Safety.
But we're victims. Victims of the Scottish government.
Always. Well, it's not just her. I'm actually she's the face, I guess, this time of the Scottish government and Scottish ministers, who this week confirmed that they will not be banning the breeding, selling or rehoming of XL bully dogs in Scotland, as has been done in England and Wales. Well, at least not yet. The dogs, which have been responsible for several fatal attacks, including one death in Scotland.
Right.
They're going to join a list of those banned in England and Wales at the end of the year. So from then, it will be illegal to breed, sell or rehome these XL bully dogs. And existing owners will have to keep their dog on a lead and muzzled in public, which sounds reasonable.
Can we do that with SNP politicians as well?
I know. However, Scotland will retain the use of... Scotland says that they're happy with dog control notices, which basically means that if your dog has been out of control, then they'll do something, about it. But I mean, haven't they ever heard of prevention is better than cure? What they're basically saying is once your XL bully dog has killed a child, or if it's attacked someone and killed them, and then we'll take action. about it. So
they surely must have a look, watch what's happened in England, and just follow what's been done there, because it's been quite an outcry of having this breed banned from what's happened. What is it? 3 deaths and numerous number of attacks. I think it waiting for something to happen first is just I can't get my head around that.
No, it doesn't make any sense. It says up until 2021, there have been around 3 dog fatalities per year in the UK, and there have been 23 since the start of 2021. So just in 2 years, we've had 23, with the XL bully being disproportionately involved in this rise.
And the people, what I don't get is the people are like, oh, it's the owners that are the problem. It's not really, it's not that. These dogs are vicious, and they're overly represented in attacks, you know, basically, and go, oh, it looks so cute. You're like, well, it's not cute when it's biting my head off.
Well, worse, it's not just that Scotland isn't going to enact this. It's that Scotland there's now going to be an influx of these XL bully dogs from south of the border, because Doug Smith, he's a spokesman for the campaign group Bully Watch, said the government's position would entice owners and breeders to relocate to Scotland. Mm-hmm. He said breeders of XL bully dogs will absolutely move to Scotland. They will come here to legally breed and export these dogs from Scotland.
Well, Grumpy says there was the dog attacked that dog that attacked the Westies on a control notice. Luckily, I managed to get him onto my shoulder. These things are a menace, and you need to be controlled. It's not. But of course, just trying to be different all the time. That was a great one there, Mary. Mark, you are up next once I get back to the right section. Okay, here we go.
Well, mine is Maggie Chapman.
Well, she's a perennial.
Again, she's always on.
Well, she was particularly bad on this committee that I was talking about earlier. She asked a question, and the question was, what happens if the Lord Advocate goes rogue?
Oh, yes. Okay, I've got the video. Do you want me to play the video?
Lady Dorian couldn't answer. She couldn't answer her because she was still laughing. She spilt a drink because she was laughing that much, and she couldn't actually get the words out to answer her. It was that much of a ridiculous question to ask. I think it was a pretty childish question.
Yeah.
As if the Lord Advocate's all of a sudden going to go rogue in Scotland.
And do what?
Yeah, exactly. It made no sense whatsoever, but it was usual. Her whole appearance, she actually said that Parliament needs more control over the judicial system. She actually said that in Parliament, in the committee as well. It was just an absolute, just completely ridiculous.
Is it this clip here, Mark? Let's see. Is it this one? Hold on.
Bathwater, as they say, and the improvements can be made within the current system, and they already are being made.
Yeah, I suppose there's that point is who oversees the overseer, and I wonder if that was at the root of some of what the Robertson report was trying to get at. You've made the case very clearly that it's inappropriate, but I do wonder if that's, and we have Esther.
Was that part
of it? A lot of waffling.
Anyway, whatever. Okay, all right. Okay, we have 3 big candidates. So who's doing the choice? Oh, Mark's
doing it.
My choice.
Yes, it's your choice.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to go with my own. Maggie.
Well, that seems to be the general.
You've lost my losing.
Yeah,
you've lost your winning streak.
Yeah.
Right.
For the simple reason, I just don't like her.
Well, she's a nutter anyway. You're quite right. I think she's a strong contender.
the viewers agree with that, Mark.
I think she's a very strong contender.
Hold on. I have to put her name up on
the
screen.
Thank you very much for being with us on the show tonight. Running a little bit long. I think it's usually running a little bit long now.
But it's getting longer and longer.
We had Dean Thomson on, and it was very interesting about Scottish National Investment Bank, of course, discussion of Matheson and Alex Salmond. What will next week bring us? I'll leave you with a thought for the week. This time from, of all people, Vice Presidential nominee Sarah Palin. Polls, she said. No, they're for strippers and cross-country skiers. So perhaps maybe we put our faith in strippers and cross-country skiers over some of these polls that are coming out, perhaps. We're so happy to have you all on the show with us every week. This is Scotland's #1 politics chat. I'm the host, Mark Devlin. I've been here tonight with Mary Devlin and Mark Zegveldt.
And the comments just keep rolling in. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for your comments. Tons there as well. But huge thank you to Mary and Mark for their contribution. We'll see you next week, Wednesday, December the 6th. And please introduce a friend to the show to watch it if you think they might enjoy it. So that's good night from me.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.